Amazing. Congratulations. That was so good. I love that film. It's so stylized. Like, I don't know, there's just so many things. So Lila, for you, my question is like, how did the concept come about?
Yeah, of course. So I was reading an article in the New York Times about people hooking up during COVID and creative ways that they were doing that. So this is sort of taken out of real life. And Valeria Safronova is the woman, her name's in the credits, who wrote the article. And I just read about these people in a park, and the image stuck with me, and very quickly a film formed in my head, and I was like, well, I guess I gotta write that down, because I think it's just, I'm fascinated with the way that people find intimacy and sexuality and fulfill longing in times like these.
I love that. So was it a recreation, like a visual put to what she did, or was it kind of, it just evolved, like it was just your creative juices started flowing from that article?
It was just inspired by it. So yeah, there was like 2 sentences about these 2 people who were in a park and did something to the same effect that happens in this movie. And just that image stuck with me, and the film grew from that. So.
And how was casting and production during like the pandemic? When was this actually, I mean, it was clearly shot during the pandemic, yes.
Yes, it was. So I wrote it for John Henry. We go back quite a ways, and I love working with him and love him dearly. And so,
by the way, you were so fascinating to watch, like the little nuances that you would have, like every moment. It was just between the lighting, the set choices. I love the little fake pink phone, like all these little things. And then just like, there was just so much going on, that was, I don't know, it was just amazing all around. So bravo to the performance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was definitely tough. I speak more than most people. Yeah, we'll get into that. But yeah, it's definitely, I'm glad that I was able to communicate without my words in this occasion.
Yeah. So there was there was 2 people.
Casting, yeah, sorry. So Michael Rebollo, who plays Beau, we cast online via an online service, and I got a ton of submissions. People were really interested in a film about queer sexuality, and they didn't have the script, but just that. And I think I said something along the lines of, if you're lonely and horny and want to act, this might be for you. And tons of people were lonely and horny and I wanted to act, and he was just the best, and I had help casting him, but yeah, it was.
And John, do you like John Henry or Jonathan?
I go by all of them, which is not a helpful answer. So okay. Let's say John Henry. I would like to change my name, but I couldn't figure out how.
John Henry, were you a part of the casting process as well? Did you sit in on the auditions or go through them with her?
No, only in like a gossipy, salacious sort of way. Like the script was written for me. So some titles like Lonely and Horny During a Pandemic apply. And so I was like, who's my co-star? Who's my co-star?
They better be cute.
And I would have probably had a harder time than Lila choosing, just because I think everyone's pretty attractive. But no, I didn't help at all. Lila was just like, this is a person. And I was like, oh. I don't know if anyone else had that reaction when Beau's Tinder profile came out, but anyway.
Good looking. And then how many people were in production? Like how many hands were on deck during the actual shoot itself?
2 hands that were mine.
Those were connected to me.
Yeah, it was just the 3 of us, and Michael and John Henry very kindly held a bounce when they were both on set, which was rarely. And then I had help with the VFX and just people giving just all around helpful notes, but on set it was just us, it was great. And we, lots of balancing. I think there's a picture of me like holding a bounce while I'm looking through the viewfinder and filming. It was.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, it's like a one-man show there. I mean, that's pretty.
I mean, three for sure, and definitely help on the sidelines. Just with COVID, it was simpler to, just try to be as safe as possible and have as few people involved.
And who did the locations? I'm assuming you did the location scouting. And where is this White House?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. Where's that house?
Yes, so that was written into the script as well, because that is where John Henry lives.
It's such it's its own star. It really is. You're like, where are you? Like, is this in California or no?
Yes.
It doesn't feel like it is though. I'm like, is this in the South? Like, where is this?
That's cool to hear. Yeah, I mean, I think I really wrote the story knowing what resources I had ahead of time, which was helpful because I was like, oh, that house, yes, it's going into a movie. And that was before I read the article that, so I think that John Henry will agree with this, which is that we both kind of were feeling creatively stagnant and really needing to do something. And I think this is a product of that and why we were so excited to make something really, detailed and, few people, but committed to it for sure.
Yeah, it's a beautiful project. Was this both of your your first silent film for both of you?
Yeah, I'll go for it. Yeah, it was for me. Like I said before, yes, it was. I'm not even silent during real life very often. Though I have been on one or two indie films and I have some stage acting experience. So part of my acting career has been like, tone it down. How can we do this more subtly? And this was like kind of an ultimate experience of that. Where I was like, okay, and this is way too heady and very fascinating, but like, I even am not so in touch with my own body. And it's one of the things I love about acting is being able to communicate or try to communicate my emotions through my body and not my words. And so this was a really interesting time. And yeah, Lila and I like both verbally and like non-verbally communicating across the camera. Like I hear and then hear, like, what does that do? Versus like, what if your eyes start at the bottom of the frame and go up, or a slight smirk at this point. So yeah, a ton of, which actually really helped me for an indie film that I did immediately after, but like just understanding like, yeah, when you're in a frame, everything matters. So controlling all the small little movements.
So this was like multi-level challenge because like you said, even being in touch with your body and like a lot of this was about like connection to oneself, connection to another human. So was that comfortable, uncomfortable to just be, clearly you have a rapport, but just, you and your friend?
Yeah, I think this might be, but I think particularly the sex scene was like very strange and like literally sitting in a park and my co-star was like going like on, off, on, and I would have to like be breathing heavily and like pretending. And even though I knew I was pretending, I was like embarrassed and in a public park, and it was like a moment of being out of control, and that is like not my chi, and that's why I'm very vocal and not so in touch with my body, because our bodies, I think in my case, run away from me faster than my mind does. So yeah, it was a very challenging experience. And I found that I was like really exhausted. Like if I had sat up and chatted all day, I wouldn't have been anywhere near as tired as I was acting in that film all day.
Yeah, it's like emotionally draining. You had to be super connected to all these parts of yourself that probably hadn't tapped into for a while or ever.
Yeah. And in a way, admitting to being lonely on camera is hard. And then knowing that a lot of people are watching it, and you're like, oh. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just thinking, based on you saying that, like, we didn't shoot any full days. We just did sort of, I mean, I think the longest day was 6 hours. And I think that was a product of COVID, but it also was beneficial because at the end of a 12-hour day, you're kind of done. And we really took care of ourselves and did it when we were able. And John Henry was, there and felt well enough to do it, I think, most of the time. I think there was one time I may have pushed you to keep going, but for the most part, I tried to be respectful of that, which honestly doesn't happen in film very often.
Oh. It like really lent itself to being during the pandemic because you had all this time, like there was such a need for like connection, creation, something to feel inspired about. And then you got to really just kind of just like take your time through the whole process, which was such a, it's like such a treasure because that doesn't really happen. Like you say, people are on the time. It's like time is money. We got to keep going. We have, a window of this, this is what we're doing. We're shooting for this straight week. So that's really cool. That's really cool. Are both of you part of the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, I identify as queer or bi, and my enrollment in the community is mostly making films.
Well, I saw that you had done the other, so I was just like, oh, wanted to.
Yeah, for the people who have not seen the other film, my first short film was about these two women in a magical cafe that was about internalized homophobia, and it was much more sad. So this was a good time to sort of go in the love direction.
Yeah.
Right, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that like Lila said, we go way back. We went to college together at the same film program, and one of the questions we bounced around there was like, what does it mean to be queer? And there was at times an exclusionary queer scene that even saw the likes of my gay ass not accepted into it. And so, yeah, it's funny that, I mean, I'm gay, but it's funny that anyone could not see Lila as queer, for example, just because, yeah, I think she's one of the queer people I know. And we talk about how that is like a concept that's just beyond necessarily even like who you're sleeping with or who you find attractive, but just like changing things up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't want to make any assumptions, but I knew that some of her work, I've seen some of it. So I was like, okay, she likes to create stories for queer voices. I love that. So I just wanted to ask that one.
Yeah, I find myself pretty much always bringing queer characters into anything I write. I'm like, oh, there they are. Like, hello.
I mean, but it's always, it's such a great thing. First of all, we need more of that. And then second of all, I think the best stories come from your life, who you are authentically, and you know what I mean? You can really speak on that. Yeah, so I think that's, Erin, I feel like you had a question.
I did, or I actually wanted to just make a statement and say that it's so weird. It wasn't until you guys actually said, yeah, it was a silent film, and it was that I was like, oh, they didn't say anything in the film, because I feel like that film was like a time capsule of what it was like literally being in a pandemic, and like how do you maneuver? We were all trying to figure it out. And so I feel that so eloquently you all captured the feeling of loneliness, the feeling of how do I trying to figure it out, like boredom even, you know what I mean? Like, I'm eating a tomato right now. Like, and then even somewhat of when you're doing these internet love connections, that there's still a disconnect, right? Like even at that last moment that they were touching with their fingers, it was still sort of a disconnect. And I feel like that so adequately sums up what that pandemic was. Like, we were trying to be connected, and we were trying to find ways, like being on Zoom, and, you know, like we were learning things technologically to be connected, but there's still a disconnect when you can't physically touch someone else and be around someone else. And so I really appreciate that you captured all of that, and then to be like, damn, they really didn't say anything. Like, you just used your expressions in your body as your art to tell the story. And I think you did a wonderful job, John Henry. And I think you did a good job, Lila, really just capturing that moment in time. You know what I mean? I feel like everyone can relate. Even if you're not a queer person, you can relate to that feeling. You were jacking off a lot. And I do have another question, because, you know, that was happening too. Like, it's like, I masturbated 5 times today. Like, what the fuck?
What else are you gonna do?
But I was wondering, John Henry, like, were you acting with that thing? Or like, did you was like, let me go ahead and try it?
Method? Is it method acting?
Right, were you method acting, sir?
There was no real remote. I won't, you know, say that I would never have if that was an actual remote control, but no, the plug was not actually there, nor was like the actual masturbation scenes there, which honestly made it way harder and probably maybe weirder. Like, it was still, particularly between my co-star, like, there was still tension there because someone is like commanding you towards an orgasm, regardless of if that like is actually happening or not.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, not method.
Okay.
Yeah, and I feel like I didn't answer this question earlier, but I think the intimacy part of it for filming, like, thank goodness it was with John Henry, and this is like the most sexual thing I've ever filmed, even though none of it is explicit, which I think is really interesting because a bunch of people have been like, oh, wow. And I'm like, this is like not explicit at all, but whatever. I think that in any other place with anybody else, I would really want to have an intimacy coordinator. Even with John Henry, I would love to have an intimacy coordinator, but of course that was not in the books for this. But I do think that is a wonderful thing that's being introduced into film, and I would love, love, love to work with somebody.
And I would just say, I think I was excited. I was really nervous about it being awkward with my co-star. So when we weren't on set, I was like constantly just trying to make jokes and name what was going on, because it not being named was what would build tension. And that's why, you know, the scenes were really good, because like we could not talk about it. I couldn't say this is really weird or make a joke about it, which is usually my like go-to diversion. Like, I actually had to sit in it and not talk.
And it's interesting that you guys felt like you were like, it's not really explicit, because there is an element of explicitness, if that's a word. And I think it's because, for one, I think it's the sound. Obviously, I could hear the sound of what it sounds like to masturbate. And I think we are literally looking into like, it's like we're we're being shown a very intimate and private act. Like, people typically masturbate when they're by themselves, you know what I mean? And so we're seeing you in these very private moments, you know? And so it does have even though it's not, oh, I'm seeing a penis on screen, you know, or tits and ass, it does have like an element of like just taboo, you know, associated with it.
Yeah, that's such a good word. Yeah.
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 but just I just felt like stylized is a word I keep coming back to. It felt like stylized, like everything from like the home to the park, the actual like 2 areas in the park where they're at, to like the little things, like again, like the tomato, the phone, like all these, the music, it was so specific. I could still hear it playing, and just like, because it was silent, it did, in the lighting and the coloring, like everything all together just felt really like, really beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, really beautiful, actually. Like,
I do have to give John Henry some credit because he helped me a lot with the costuming, which I think really was something we put a lot of time and effort into. So I did not do this all alone. And I think the colors were really important for me in this world of like trying to make yourself feel better, trying to put color on it, even if like, and it's just super bright. It's, you know, what we're hoping to feel, but actually it's a little bit too much, and it's not actually making us feel all that much better. And yeah.
And I'll do a mutual shout out and say that number one, I still walk around with that phone case, and I get stopped and people ask me about it all the time.
Love that.
It's so fun. And Lila has, even in her previous film, it's like really embodies magical realism. And our film program was one of the only people that could light something worth a damn, and like will always bring color and like a different light to the scenario. And so, yeah, like I think that you're absolutely right. And if anyone catches it, look for flamingos if you watch it again. That's gonna be my hint on that.
Okay, checking it out.
Do you feel that the dating apps, and because I don't know what the statistics are, but do you think dating apps really surged during the pandemic? Have you ever tried a dating app, or was the pandemic the first time you ever tried it? Because I know for me, I never tried a dating app until the pandemic.
I've been on.
I can speak to the numbers, but John Henry, you should speak to the rest of it.
Yeah. I want Jonathan, and then I want to hear like what you have to say.
So yeah, I have them all. I have Grindr, Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge. And I think honestly they became a lot of what we saw, which is that like people were trying maybe to make a connection, but they would drop off so quickly, super dead, because it was like, what are we going to chat for the next 3 months? Like, where is this going? Where can this go? And I actually did, when I was living in DC towards the start of the pandemic, start to see someone. And because of the pandemic, it totally changed the nature of the relationship. Like we had our first date in masks, and then it was like, well, do you want to see each other without masks? And I was like, yes. And he was like, well, I'm going to tell my roommates you're part of my bubble. Like second date, we're bubbled together. And that means we're committed to seeing each other for at least like a couple more months, because neither of us wanted to seem silly to his roommates. So yeah, I think the dating apps got to that weird place where it's like, are we just gonna do it? Or like, is there really any reason to even show up here and swipe?
Yeah, wow. Interesting.
What is the bubble? It's so funny. Just such a different world. I feel like they had to have surged during that time.
Yeah.
Have you thought now what's the next what's next for this film? Have you submitted it to anything? I feel like this film could just do some really great things.
Thanks. Yes, we just submitted to a bunch of festivals the other day. And I kind of set out with this film to not submit it to festivals because I was like, you know what, this just needs to go out. This just needs to go out into the world, and I want to put it out there. And I do a lot of sitting on projects for years and months and not getting it out when I am excited about it and want people to see it. And so I thought that when I had posted it, I wouldn't really be able to submit to festivals, but it turns out that was not the case. And plenty of festivals don't care. So yeah, we are out to festivals. And I think there was something else I was saying, but yeah.
Is this your first film together?
I wrote some music for a film that John Henry made in school. But yeah, is it? That's cool.
Yeah, I think it might be. It's pretty wild.
Well, it definitely needs to be more. It's a good marriage.
Yeah, we love each other. I love him a lot. I shouldn't say for both of us.
Moving to LA, I was like, I know I've got one. So
that's all you need.
I've directed him in theater before. That's what it is.
Oh, nice.
yes, that's true.
I wrote a play in college and we did a staged reading of it. Yeah.
Other trivia, one of the Tinder matches was a co-star in that play. And I would real life swipe right on him and always text him. LOL. Anyway, the tea behind the scenes. Hit me up for more.
The dating apps are crazy to me because I'm always like, I feel like for men, it seems like, okay, you said you were on Bumble, Tinder, Grindr.
And Hinge.
Grindr seems like definitely sex. Like everyone on Grindr is just like my friend who is also queer. He showed me his Grindr account. He would come into town and be like, I need to find somebody to hook up with. And literally people was showing like their assholes, like their dick. I was like, what is happening on this app? This is insane. Oh my God. So it just feels like it's levels to it. I mean, I'm on the Hinge app, so I feel like everybody's trying to hook up, and I feel like people are definitely trying to hook up on Hinge, but it seems like Grindr specifically seems like I'm trying to do sex, I'm trying to make the sex. Are you down with that?
I mean, yeah.
No. Did I freeze? No.
We can sort of hear you, but you are
talking.
John,
there, you're back.
There you are.
Okay, amazing. Hi. I was gonna say that I think yes, Grindr can totally be like that. I'll also say that I went on a hookup once upon a time on Grindr and had a man that kissed and labeled every bone in my body, and we like saw each other for a long time afterwards and are still very good friends. So like, it doesn't have to, I'm someone that strives for intimacy. And one of the things I wanted to say that's interesting about this is like, I think being gay, it's weird having, not weird, but the world perceives it a type of way, having your identity wrapped up in your sexuality. Yeah. And like, I think this is why we get a lot of accusations of gay men or whatever being inappropriate. But everyone is out, like you said, everyone is out there trying to hook up. Like, everyone has a large part of their identity in their sexuality. And there's like, for I think a lot of queer people, the whole repression piece and being able to like kind of burst outside of that box when you finally get a chance. And that's, I think, why Grindr is so rabid, is because like, it's just so many people that have lived under curtains for so long, just like kids at a candy store. And it is not always appropriate, but I do think that there's a lot of positive, I think there are negatives that I've seen in the gay community around having like such a hyperfixation on sex. Like sometimes intimacy is really hard to find, but also like there's a lot of liberated things that come out of having that. So
yeah,
I will also say on the queerness of it all, like this story actually was straight in the article that I read it in. So like the real life version of this was a straight couple. And I think like, you know, everybody's doing everything. That everybody wants to, you know, find pleasure and love. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, yeah.
So I have a question. Which of you wrote and orchestrated the like butt plug scene? Like who was like, boom, this is it. Like I have a great idea. I believe that John Henry was like, it's not me.
It was me. Yeah, definitely.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you were just like, I mean, it's genius though, right? If you want to connect, but you're like fearful of like, you know, there's COVID happening. So we can't really touch, but we still want to have fun.
Yeah, and I mean, that was also inspired by this couple that I read about. It was just not a butt plug; it was a dildo vibrator sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's just so fascinating. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah. Why would you? I mean, except for the, maybe getting in trouble sort of thing in this public park, which is why I would not film it live ever, by the way. But I think it's, yeah, I just think it's so important for people to be able to express themselves sexually and feel within their sexuality, as well as just like be okay with what they want to do, and most of all, finding pleasure is like something we all deserve.
Love it.
We were talking just a little bit at the beginning before we got on about like if this is age appropriate, and I'm actually a summer camp counselor and a director, and so this is out on my public social media, and not many of my campers follow me, but some of them do, and I had to reach out to them and be like, hey, this is not something I would like a bunch of your like 15-year-old peers to know about. But also, I mean, even having those conversations as a summer camp counselor with kids who I think you can call people into more maturity around like sex. And what I would do is I would just be like, they'd be like, sex, and I'd be like, yeah, sex. And to watch these like kids be like, you're not giggling. Like, no, like what it's, and by taking it with that seriousness and calling people into it. So I think it's been weird for me to know that there is like a sexual image of me that like could be called back on if I decided to become political. I'm very political, or if it's summer camp or whatever. But I mean, and not to be too cliche, but like that's what being gay is. And if you own it, you take the power away from everyone else to make fun of you for it. Like, yeah, I was in a short film and I masturbated. I also masturbate in real life, in real time, sometimes multiple times a day. I do own a butt plug and like sex toys. Okay. And yeah, not being afraid to say that makes it less weird for me to like have that out in the public.
Yeah. But also it's like, I think there's something to be said about, there's always this like sheltering of these young minds and impressionable kids. But, I'm pretty sure that boys are masturbating at a very young age. They're doing it behind closed doors. They're experimenting with sex and their sexuality. So it's like to see something that like, they might laugh about it if they're like in a group of friends because they're just uncomfortable and young and probably, it's awkward, but they're probably like, it resonates with them. They're like, oh yeah, like I do that, So I don't see anything about it that's like inappropriate. I think it's just really beautifully done and something you guys should both be so proud of. It's just really, really a great film. I feel like everybody needs to see it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Does anybody else have any other questions? You guys want to share anything else before we wrap it up?
Thoughts, comments, concerns?
Okay, I wanted to say one last thing. It's like, Jesus Christ.
I was like, I feel like Aaron's holding it in.
I'm gonna give other people a chance to say something. I'm like you, John Henry. I talk all the time. Like it's like I need to be quiet sometimes. Did you want to say something, Steffi Waffy?
No, I'm just super observant. It was amazing. I'm just listening to everything.
I just wanted to just piggyback on the statement about the uncomfortability of centered around learning our bodies and pleasuring ourselves and being an activist as far as pleasure and then even the concern that could something like me doing something like this actually affect me in a negative way. And I think it's so crazy how we have so many contradictions in our society. Like the level of music that we listen to today that's mainstream, it is so ratchet and so sexual, it's so sexualized. So then to have a film where we're really just exploring what it means to embrace sexuality in a time where we may not be able to physically touch each other seems very important. You know what I mean? It seems like important work. And so like, I just wanted to make that last statement. and just encourage you and like also uplift you that what you did, I feel like isn't something that you should ever feel ashamed of, like you said.
I also think that this film is like really, it just feels important. Yeah. Like you said, like a time capsule. Like you perfectly captured a moment in time that like no one in the world has ever experienced. And we experienced it together, but separately, you know? So I think there's on so many levels, it's just like a really one of a kind, super important film and just so beautifully done. Like,
thanks.
All I got. It's just so good. I want everyone to see it. Amazing.
Well, thank you for watching it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And please keep me posted on like, you know, if anything comes, you know what I mean? If you get into a festival or whatnot, like, we'd love to, you know, keep spreading the word for you both on your journeys.
Thanks so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait to be associated with QueerLand. That's exciting to me.
Yeah.
Yes. So hopefully we'll have a physical space, you know, within the next 6 months or something. So a community center. Yeah. You can come play.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Come create.
Awesome. Nice.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming today. And can you possibly send me that recording?
Yes, I'm gonna stop.